Richard thinks I need more energy here. Okay, I want to thank Justice Richard Bernstein for joining us here today. Thanks for coming down to the Ford Building, World Headquarters at Deadline Detroit.
Oh, I love it. I have to tell you,
Right.
you really can feel like an energy here. It's got that excitement of a newsroom. It's got that excitement of reporters, following stories. It just has that really kind of cool vibe that goes into like journalism.
Right. And Richard's saying I need to have more energy here to match his energy, which I don't think I can match your
A
energy.
little bit more energy. The energy, you know what I mean? But we'll work on it. I think as our
Right.
time together progresses, the energy will just kind of come naturally.
Right, right. And I
spirit
want to
will grow.
mention that, Richard is a macher. For
don't know
those
what
who
that-
know, in Yiddish means a big shot.
No, not at all.
Just
Are you kidding? I wish. Maybe one day.
No,
but I
no.
can tell you,
Yeah.
certainly not now.
Okay. No. So I'm going to ask you.
I have to say, no one's ever called me that before. So that's actually one of the first times I've ever.
You should be honored.
Oh, yeah. Well, because it's not true.
Oh, yeah.
That's why no one's ever used that term.
Yeah. I actually have a quick story. When I worked at the Washington Post, my mother, it was after September 11th, my mother saw Bob Woodward on TV, and she called me and said, she goes, "Is he still a macher?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And so I went up to him and said, "Hey, Bob," I said, "my mom asked if you're a macher." And he said, "I used to know what that meant." And I said, "A big shot," and he laughed. But anyways, so I'm going to ask you the first question.
Yes.
A lot of people know you. In fact, you were coming in today, and the security guard was mentioning, that he missed you, being on the commercials and the radio show. You were well known for being on the law firm. Do you miss the law firm? You were on the law firm commercials.
Sure.
Do you miss the law firm?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think the biggest challenge that arises when you become a judge is you go from being a participant in the game where you're in the game and you're fighting in the game and you're passionate about the game to now becoming a ref and you're refereeing the game. Well, I think it's a transition that all lawyers go through who ultimately become judges. But what's really interesting on this is that I always remember after my election having a conversation about what are the qualities that go into being a good judge. And we were talking about, okay, so what are these qualities? What is it that would make someone a good jurist? And, we were having this discussion and people were saying, oh, you know what? If you want to be a good judge, it really comes down to, what school you went to, your academics, your intellectual curiosity, your ability to research, write, and publish. And I remember saying, you know what? Those are not the criteria that go into being a good judge. And when people pressed me as to what I thought was the most important element, I responded by saying it's our life experiences. Life experience is the most critical gift that God gives to you because it's through life experience you come to have an understanding and appreciation for the struggles and challenges, hardships and difficulties that people have to face each and every day.
Right.
So the best judges are the judges that have the greatest life experiences, the ones that have known hardship, difficulty, pain in their lives are able to better serve people because they're able to approach cases with a sense of empathy, compassion, understanding. And you were talking about the story about how we met that wonderful gentleman, in the lobby of your building.
Right.
The essence of public service, whether you're a judge or whatever position you hold, is you have to love people and you have to believe in people and you have to want to make life better for people because that's what this entire thing is about. It's really
Well, you
about
certainly love people.
you have to love people because when you wake up during the day, you have to have a sense of purpose and mission. And if you can have a sense of passion for why you're here and why you're created and what you're ultimately sent here to do, then you get to live a very rich, meaningful, and full life. And what I do at the end of every day is I always say a prayer to the Creator that hopefully I use the day well, that I used the time that he gave me wisely, and that I was able to do something with the day that was able to have an impact and an effect on other people. And if you can get to the end of your day and feel like you really did something with it, that it was meaningful, that it had value, that ultimately someone's life was changed because of something that you did. It's about the idea of helping people that you've never even met. And if you're able to experience that and you're able to do that, then you get to have such a meaningful, fulfilling life because you get to live with that sense of mission. And when you live with mission, it is the greatest life that you could ever have.
Let me ask you this. Okay, you're not only a justice, but you're also a blind justice.
Yes.
And what does that take to prepare for a case compared to your colleagues on the bench?
So that is such a great question. And it was interesting because, one of the things that is always a big discussion is what is the best way to choose a judge? And there's a back and forth. People will say, should you choose a judge through a nomination process, appointment process, a merit selection process, or through an election? I happen to think that elections are the absolute best way to choose judges. And people always say, well, why is that? How you think an election is better than a nomination or an appointment process? And I absolutely do. And now there's a pro and con to each system, right? To an appointment process versus an election process. But let me tell you something. If we didn't have an election process, I would not be serving as a Supreme Court justice. And the reason why is that, look, I'm different. I'm blind, right? And when you're blind, you're just different. That's just the way it is. You don't do things the same way. You have to approach things differently. Everything's a little bit more challenging. Everything's a little bit more difficult. And if I had to go in front of a merit selection committee, I can tell you, Alan, exactly what would happen. They would see someone like me coming before them, and they would say, oh, wow, that is so inspiring that, this blind person wants to become a judge. But then what would happen is, after you left and the doors closed, they would say, oh, wow, that was so moving, that was so exciting. But in the end, they're not willing to take a chance. And what they will do is they will always go with people who look like them. They will go with people who sound like them. They will go with people who are them.
What would they think was taking, when you say taking a chance, what is it you think they would be taking a chance
I think that a merit selection committee, if I had to go in front of one, would probably say things like this. Oh, I don't think that he could handle the documents. I don't think he could keep up with the pace. Oh, how is he going to participate in conference? They would basically be so academic and so intellectual about it that they would come to find a litany of different reasons as to why you couldn't perform in this position, rather than doing what the people of our great state did. And I love this state. You have to understand, Alan, I love Michigan. I love everything about Michigan. I love the people in this state because this is the greatest state in the union. And you know why? Because through an electoral process, I had the opportunity to serve the people as a Supreme Court justice. Because what happened is, because we elect our justices on the Supreme Court, the decision was taken away from kind of the elites who kind of think that they know everything, and it was given to the people of the state. So basically the 11 million people who make up our great state got to choose who was going to represent them on the highest court. Were people willing to allow a disabled person to occupy such a position? And the reason that I am so passionate about the electoral system for judges is because the people of the state of Michigan said, absolutely yes. We feel that a blind person is able to understand and appreciate the struggles and the hardships and the challenge that we have to face each and every day in our lives. We don't want some blue chip person who is so isolated that they can't relate and connect and appreciate what real people have to contend with and have to face each and every day.
Now, what do you have to contend with now as a justice in terms of preparing for cases?
Well, that's a great question.
Tell me the process.
Well, exactly.
Of that.
And so that's the question. So our Supreme Court has functioned the exact way for 200 years. So now the question was, okay, are you ready to now have a disabled person in that position? And as we were talking about before, people in the state of Michigan said, yes, We want somebody with that different perspective, with that different understanding, with that different appreciation to represent us on a multi-panel court. And now the court had to figure out a way to make this work. So there are two key elements that go into being a Supreme Court justice. The absolute most important component that goes into being on the court is something that's called conference. Conference happens every single Wednesday. This is probably the most important day. And the reason is that there are usually about 26 cases that are on the conference agenda. And what you have to think about is that every one of these cases involves somebody's entire life. Someone's entire life is going to be decided that Wednesday at the Hall of Justice in Lansing, Michigan. And think about the kind of cases that we work on. You're usually dealing with capital cases. You're dealing with people who are facing life in prison without the possibility of parole. You're dealing with the highest level of civil cases. You're dealing with all levels of administrative cases. You're dealing with tax cases that can range over $1 billion. You're dealing with parents who are losing their children. So every case that we decide has a direct impact on people, and not just on people, but on their families, on their communities. And so whenever you make a decision, you always have to think about what is the implication, what is at stake, what is going to happen based off the decision that you're going to render on Wednesday in Lansing.
So what does it take for you to...
Okay, so what happens is that when you go to conference, you are deciding which cases the court is going to hear. So people say, okay, how does this work if you have someone who's blind? You know, how do you perform in this position if you're not able to see? So how does this all work? So people say, okay, well, do you use Braille in order to participate in conference? Remember, there's 26 cases on the agenda. And the answer is that Braille is not effective in this situation. You cannot use Braille. And the reason is that you have to review the transcripts of the lower courts. So if you're trying to review all of this voluminous information, Braille is simply not an option. And the reason that Braille doesn't work is, I want you to think about this. What if you're trying to review a massive transcript and there's hundreds of pages in that transcript? If I give you one textbook page, you're going to give me 65 Braille pages. So for like one textbook page, I'm going to get 60 Braille pages. So imagine taking all the transcripts that you have to review for that case and putting it into Braille. It's just simply not an option. So then people say, well, what about using technology? Do you use a computer? I mean, because that would probably be a great way to do it, using your computer. Well, for conference, a computer's not going to work. And the reason a computer isn't going to work is because if I have to listen to my headset, then I'm not able to have a conversation with the other judges. So the only option that I have, which is what we do every week, is I memorize all 26 cases. I commit the cases to memory.
And now, how do you do that?
As an accommodation, I get one additional clerk. So all the other chambers have 4 clerks, I get 5 clerks. Because of the fact that it takes me so much longer to do the work, that extra clerk is absolutely essential to keeping up with the pace.
And what is that? Are they reading you the case?
Yeah, they're reading, discussing it, and what they're doing is they're taking the written materials that are put together by the rest of the office, and then we're basically internalizing that material, and then I go back to each clerk within the office and discuss the case kind of intimately with them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus in on the specific legal issues that are being discussed. So if we're discussing a hearsay issue, I'm going to focus in on that issue. If we're focusing in on an issue as to whether evidence should have been admitted, I'm going to focus in on that specific issue. If we're focusing in on, you know, a jury instruction, I'm going to focus in on that specific issue.
How much harder do you feel like you have to work compared to your colleagues?
I would say, in terms of the amount of time it takes me to do something, if I'm just slower because it just takes me, it's just so much more intense for me to perform in the position. So I would say that for every hour that you put into something, I have to put in 5. So it's about a 1-to-5 ratio. So the level of preparation that is necessary for conference is immense. And what I always discuss with my clerks is I always say, look, I realize that we have to work harder. I realize that our hours are much longer. I realize that this is a much more intensive process. But here's the thing. The people of the state of Michigan gave us this incredible opportunity.
Right.
They allowed us to serve in this position. So failure is not an option.
What the-
We
how-
have to
how
perform
late-
at the best of our ability because we simply have no other choice.
How late at night are you working in your
Constantly.
offices?
It's just, we're
Are
constantly
you
working.
ordering in pizza?
No, because what we'll do is you can work from various different places. So
So
what's
people
nice
are-
is, so you don't have to always be in your Lansing office.
I
You
see.
can be at home.
Okay.
And the key is that basically,
So you'll be on the phone with
exactly.
your clerks.
So let me put it this way. I get, the way I always like to say it, I am the one person who gets an incredible benefit from an unlimited phone plan.
Yeah.
So I am the one guy who basically, literally, finally gets a real deal because when I get an unlimited plan, I get
You use it.
really a lot of
you
usage
truly use
out
it.
of that. We're
Right.
talking 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day
Wow.
of use out of my unlimited plan. So finally, I was
So it
able
must
to
be
beat
burning
the
up.
system. Oh yeah, let me put it
Must
this
be.
way. I finally
Yeah.
look at a plan and I say, you know what? I am totally getting the better value out of this plan.
Right. Let me ask you.
Yes.
There's a pretty eclectic mix of folks on the Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, liberal, conservative. How do you guys all get along?
So I'm so glad you asked that. People really like each other on the court. People have a genuine closeness. There are genuine friendships that
Are
exist.
there heated discussions? though?
Absolutely, but there's never anything personal. And that's why I really enjoy the work. We have some of the greatest academic, intellectual conversations you could possibly ever imagine. It's very much similar to, what it's like to be back in law school, where you're having debates, you're having discussions. The conversation is rigorous. It's incredibly exciting. Everyone is unbelievably prepared. People know the materials, and people are passionate
Do you ever
about
go
their
home
beliefs.
angry at the end of the night and go,
No, because the key to the position is that you come in, and what you find is that people are genuine about their beliefs. I have a specific, jurisprudential philosophy that might differ with somebody else. But what you come to realize is that people's beliefs are true. They're real, they're genuine, they're sincere. But here's the key. People respect each other because you know that is a genuine, sincere belief that everyone kind of brings to the table.
Right.
And when people approach, these questions and these concepts with intellectual integrity, which is what everybody on the court does and always does, then you really are able to respect the different positions because you see that people get there through a genuine, sincere belief system. And I think that's critical.
who's got the best sense of humor on the court?
Well, actually, what's great is I think everybody does.
Yeah.
It's a really fun group of people. I mean, it's a really nice group. I mean,
So you get some laughs along the way, or
oh, absolutely. I think what happens is that you come to realize that in order to do this position, because we spend so much time together, it really becomes like a family. No one outside the court can really understand and appreciate how difficult this job is and how challenging it is. And so it's really the 7 people on the court that are able to understand kind of what actually goes into this and the hours and the intensity and the responsibility, the decision making that you're having to contend with each and every day. And I think as a result, through that kind of shared experience, you just have a real closeness. But when conference is over, what we always do is we adjourn to another room, and that's where we, have lunch together, and we have meals together, and that we don't ever discuss work.